Soraya Mia. We deep dive into dealing with the raging Delta variant and how to protect whistleblowers in the country. That's coming up. The government has been asked to reconsider the relaxed restrictions for fully vaccinated people, which health experts deem as potentially dangerous. The Malaysian Health Coalition said while it understood the country needed to reopen and provide some privileges for the group, it urged, among others, for the government to reconsider its decision.
One of the reasons, according to them, is that only 27% of our resident population of all ages are fully vaccinated, and this excludes undocumented migrants. Chile only relaxed restrictions after 50% coverage, and Singapore is targeting relaxed restrictions at 70% coverage. Therefore, the MHC proposed postponing the relaxation to a time determined by a clear set of publicized criteria, where scientific and public health criteria for relaxation were built by health experts without interference. It said they can include criteria such as fully vaccinated rate equivalent to or more than 70% of the total population, total critical care bed occupancy rate for COVID-19 of equivalent to or less than 90%, total daily new cases equivalent to or less than 4,000 with share of positive tests equivalent to or less than 5%, and other criteria. These criteria, MHC added, must be publicized today so that any future decisions will be solely based on evidence. It also said the government should provide more clarity on relaxed rules, including clarifying the specifics of relaxed restrictions, as blanket vaccine privileges would create loopholes that would impede the NRP.
Last Sunday, the Ministry of Health reported a historic high number of deaths from COVID-19, with 360 deaths in 24 hours. From this number, there is also a significant number of brought-in dead or BID cases. To deep dive on the severity of the situation, we speak to infectious disease expert from University Malaya, Professor Dr. Adiba Kamaruzzaman. According to the ministry, 80% of the brought-in dead cases reported on Sunday were never diagnosed with COVID-19.
What is distressing to me is that, the age group of people who are affected is also, includes young, people in their 30s and so forth. I can't tell you for sure what is the cause of this, because we've not done an in-depth study or really looked at things in detail, but I can only offer some probable reasons. So as you said, many have not been tested. I think for foreigners, it could be lack of awareness, number one, of the disease, because the disease may be relatively silent. You just assume that, you have a bit of fever and you feel unwell, and maybe it's dengue, maybe it's nothing serious, and you don't take it seriously. Number two, for foreigners, particularly if they are undocumented, the concern around coming forward for testing and that they might, be arrested is possibly another factor. And thirdly, cost. Cost of tests, cost of hospitalization when people have not got a secure job, may be another reason. The other, for Malaysians also, they may have been tested, but they may not be aware of how quickly the disease can progress, and, if you're living alone and all of that.
Adiba added that the attack rate for the Delta variant is higher as compared to the original strain, with the deterioration rate also much faster.
In the past, it may, usually in the first week, patients are unwell, and it's the second week when they get what's called the cytokine storm syndrome, where they go into respiratory failure. But, from our observation, that phase where they deteriorate has shortened to, I don't want to put a figure to it because I haven't looked at this in great detail. I would say that it probably is quicker by at least 3 to 4 days. Yeah.
We'll take a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Malaysia needs to provide better protection for whistleblowers. Center to Combat Corruption and Cronyism C4 says whistleblowers are often subjected to harassment and intimidation, as illustrated in recent events where activists and media personnel were investigated by authorities for drawing attention to shortcomings in the government's handling of the pandemic.
C4 Centre's K. Sudagaran Stanley calls for reforms on the Whistleblower Protection Act to allow for more transparency and accountability.
Well, there's a lot of gaps in the current act. For example, you are only allowed to go and make a complaint to enforcement agencies listed under the act. So that is something that we are actually calling for amendments, for Section 6(1) of the Whistleblower Protection Act to actually be amended, because you should allow a whistleblower to actually go make a complaint to other people also, including, for example, lawyers, media organizations, or civil society organizations, because people sometimes, especially when the matter being whistleblower about involves a government wrongdoing or government agency wrongdoing, people are going to be afraid to actually go to the police or go to the MACC and actually make a complaint. They may not have faith that their complaints will be actually investigated, or they may actually be afraid of being targeted themselves.
Stanley also urges reform to disallow executive interference in the enforcement of the Act.
So currently, Section 4, which is the power of minister to issue directions, and Section 27, which is the power of minister to make regulations, this needs to be removed, because we cannot allow a minister to actually give directions to enforcement agencies what and what not to do. This is about blowing the whistle. So we cannot allow for government's interference in enforcement of the act. So that section needs to be removed. That's clear. Is for the decision to actually provide protection. Currently, if I want to go and make a complaint to an enforcement agency, it is the police or the MACC that actually decides whether they want to provide me with the protection under the Whistleblower Protection Act. Now, what we are calling for is that the police or the MACC or other enforcement agencies or the government cannot decide, cannot decide to whom they want to give the protection. We should have an independent body, which is separate and free from government influence, that actually makes this decision on who to give the protection to. In this time of pandemic, there's just so much of room for abuse to happen, from vaccines, from contracts and so on. There's just so much of room for manipulation and for corruption and for abuse of power to happen. I think it's important for the government to actually send out the message right now that whistleblowers will be protected at all accord, and we must encourage this positive, attitude of actually whistleblowing.
Acts of intimidation, he added, serve no purpose but to further erode confidence in the system and prevent future whistleblowers from coming forward.
The persecution of whistleblowers in this country must stop. We cannot go after whistleblowers because that really sends a wrong message out to people. So effectively, by actually arresting and investigating or even charging whistleblowers in the country. It puts off other potential whistleblowers in wanting to come forward and to blow the whistle. They'll be scared that they might be targeted or they might end up in court and so on. So this culture, when we talk about what is the first step of enforcement, this needs to change first. We need to have this positive attitude of encouraging whistleblowers to come forward and to blow the whistle.
On the international front, 11 anti-government protesters were detained in Bangkok today ahead of a planned demonstration involving a convoy of cars in Thailand's capital. The protest is part of a youth-led movement demanding reform of the monarchy and resignation of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. 750 police officers were deployed to deal with the planned car protest today. Last weekend, more than 1,000 anti-government protesters clashed with police. The movement intensified amid growing public anger about the government's handling of the kingdom's worst wave of COVID-19 infections, taking a toll on the economy. Demonstrations last year attracted hundreds of thousands of people before a crackdown by authorities. All public gatherings are illegal under the COVID-19 emergency law. Bangladesh began vaccinating thousands of Rohingya Muslims against COVID-19 today in the world's largest refugee settlement, Cox's Bazar. Authorities there pleaded help by national agencies and international organizations to vaccinate all adults in the camps amid a surge across the country. District official Mahbubur Rahman said around 48,000 Rohingya aged 55 and above will be inoculated between Tuesday and Thursday with the help of UN agencies. He added that all adult Rohingya people will be vaccinated in phases. Aid workers have long warned of a potential humanitarian disaster if a significant outbreak in the refugee camp occur. In Cox's Bazar, over 1 million Rohingya who fled a brutal military crackdown in neighboring Myanmar had found sanctuary. Bangladesh has been battling an alarming surge in infections and deaths in recent weeks, recording more than 1.36 million people infected and almost 23,000 deaths. In other news, Britain will relax some travel restrictions to help delegates attend the United Nations Climate Conference in Scotland later this year. This includes shorter quarantine period for delegates from red list countries who have been vaccinated. A COP26 official said the measures for the summit in Glasgow would strike a balance between allowing the talks to go ahead and protecting public health. Reduced quarantine period of 5 days will be imposed on vaccinated individuals from red list countries, while there will be no quarantine required for those coming from amber or green list countries, whether vaccinated or not. Unvaccinated people from red list countries would still need to quarantine for 10 days, while delegates are encouraged to get fully vaccinated, with Britain offering vaccines to all those registered. The theme of this year's Indigenous Peoples Day is No One is Left Behind. Have we lived up to it? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to our guests about issues faced by Orang Asli and Orang Asal. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates on COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and Astro Awani app. I'm Soraya Mia. Selamat menyambut Ma'al Hijrah. We'll see you again.
Bagaimana untuk memaksimumkan hasil pertanian melalui teknologi?
Indeks Jaminan Bekalan Makanan Global, kedudukan Malaysia berada di tempat ke-43.
Ujian terhadap sampel